dear students. The title of this lecture is Robinson Crusoe's Second Voyage, or students, just before dealing with the second adventure of Robinson Crusoe, let us discuss the question of the previous lecture, which is, how does Daniel Defoe portray the danger that Crusoe has confronted in his first voyage? Daniel Defoe portrays danger here through the vivid use of images of the natural world. The cruelty and danger of the natural world represented by the storm, the sea, and its high waves are portrayed here to show the danger that Crusoe and his colleagues, the seamen, have faced. The sea is delineated as a huge monster that threatens to swallow the seamen and the ship itself. The waves of the sea are portrayed as mountains that prevent the ship from sailing peacefully. The heavy storm is described as a terrible storm that creates horror, fear, and anxiety. Moreover, darkness envelops the whole scene, which makes Crusoe and the seamen see nothing around them save distress, danger, and death itself. As you know, last time we talked about Crusoe's first adventure, and we said that this adventure ends with failure, since it ends with the sinking of the ship and the survival of its people. Among them, of course, is Robinson Crusoe, who has been advised by the captain of the ship not to ride the sea again, since he looks at this failure as a bad omen. Let us see today whether Crusoe is going to give importance to the advice of this captain or not. Students, would you please go to page 14, the third paragraph, in which Crusoe continues narrating what happens to him, saying, "In this state of life, however, I remain sometime uncertain what measures to take, and what course of life to lead. An irresistible reluctance continued to going home, and as I stayed a while, the remembrance of the distress I had been in wore off, and as that abated, the little motion I had in my desires to return wore off with it, till at last I quite laid aside the thoughts of it, and looked out for a voyage." Crusoe here says that after his first voyage that ends with a disaster, he seems reluctant to go home. Returning to York, where his father and mother live, seems to be very difficult for him. It is difficult because Crusoe cannot accept failure. He is ashamed to see his father, whom Crusoe has ignored his advice. Crusoe thinks that his friends and neighbors are going to laugh at him because he has achieved nothing. Crusoe the young man seems irrational here because he thinks that people are going to mock at him. It is the incongruous temper of the youth that makes him feel shame to repent and not to be ashamed of his ill behavior, which is neglecting his father's advice. Here, Crusoe has forgotten the distress he has lived in his first voyage, and he has made up his mind to make a new voyage. Students, would you please go to the next paragraph, the same page, page 14, in which Crusoe says, "That evil influence which carried me first away from my father's house, that carried me into the wild and indigested notion of raising my fortune, and that impressed those conceits so forcibly upon me as to make me deaf to all good advice and to the entreaties and even command of my father, I say, the same influence, whatever it was, presented the most unfortunate of all the enterprises of my view, and I went on board a a vessel bound to the coast of Africa, or as our sailors vulgarly call it, a voyage to Guinea. Crusoe here keeps telling us how he has strongly followed his inclination and great desire to make an adventure by riding the sea. It is his evil influence, as he has described here, that has carried him away from his family, home, and his country, and led him to the wild world, which is the remote island. He has decided to make his second voyage, but this time out of his country and even out of Europe. He has decided to go to Guinea in Africa. Students, let us now read the last paragraph of page 14, in which Crusoe says, "It was my lot first of all to fall into pretty good company in London, which does not always happen to such loose and unguided young fellows as I then was. I first fell acquainted with the master of a ship who had been on the coast of Guinea, and who have had very good success there, was resolved to go again, and who taking a fancy to my conversation, which was not at all disagreeable at that time, hearing me say I had a mind to see the world, told me if I would go the voyage with him, I should be at no expense, and I should be his messmate and his companion." Crusoe seems lucky here in this voyage. He says that by the help of a captain he met in London, he sails to the coast of Africa, particularly to Guinea. He describes this captain as a pretty good company. As a sailor, Crusoe lacks experiences. He knows nothing about the sea and navigation. Therefore, he needs someone to help him. He has found that his friendship with this captain will help him be a good sailor, and it will enrich his information about the sea, since the captain has promised to Crusoe to make him his assistant. Page 15, the second paragraph. "This was the only voyage which I may say was successful in all my adventures, and which I owe to the integrity and honesty of my friend, the captain, under whom also I got a competent knowledge of the mathematics and the rules of navigation, learned how to keep an account of the ship's course, take an observation, and in short to understand some things that were needful to be understood by a sailor. For as he took delight to introduce me, I took delight to learn." Crusoe here says that this is the only voyage he has made which is successful. This success is due to the help of his honest friend, the captain, who supports Crusoe and helps him knowing more knowledge about the sea. Crusoe gains knowledge of mathematics and the rules of navigation. In other words, he becomes a good sailor. Students, we are still discussing page 15, the second paragraph, in which Crusoe continues talking about his second adventure, saying, "This voyage made me both a sailor and a merchant, for I brought home 5 pounds 9 ounces of gold dust for my adventure, which yielded me in London at my return almost 300 pounds, and this filled me with those aspiring thoughts which have so completed my ruin." Here Crusoe says that he has made a good business in this adventure. The voyage seems to make him both a sailor and a merchant. Crusoe brings home money, gold, and success. Students, what does Crusoe mean by saying, "And this filled me with those aspiring thoughts which have since so completed my ruin"? Of course, here he is talking about his second adventure, and he says that this second adventure has filled him with Those aspiring thoughts that have completed his ruin. What ruin he is talking about here? Think of it, please, and try to write me. Students, thank you very much for your listening.